For some, the promise of retirement is the one thing that keeps them going to work each day. The tedium is terrible, pointlessness weighs down on them, getting motivated seems beyond them. Then comes the last day of work and the relief is euphoric. We've got golf, lazing on the beach, and long lunches replace the daily grind. But for many, eventually, the joy begins to wane. Life that was governed by the endless routine no longer has structure. Work friends have gone. This is a major reason why as many as 15% of older people experience depression, and many more grapple with anxiety. So, what's it all about? We set out to find out more about this common complaint and ways to avoid the come down after retirement. John, often people are sad and we call it being depressed, but is that really depression?
Well, it's not what we mean by medical depression. It's normal depression. It's really unhappiness, isn't it? Yeah. But there's a whole lot of other feelings that get mixed in, like anxiety, and I was thinking loneliness. Loneliness isn't depression, but you get depressed when you're lonely, and there's a sort of mixture of these various feelings, but that's normal. What psychiatrists and doctors and health staff see as being depression is something different. Yeah, there's a different quality to the depression. The depression that you and I get, and everybody else at times, is in relation to something that's happened or a situation we're in. Right. And I think a depressive illness or disorder is something where it goes on, it persists.
That's exactly right.
And
I understand.
It's not, inverted commas, normal. It's not what everybody else gets.
How did you know you were depressed rather than just sad?
At first I didn't, and that's one of the things about depression. You just don't know what's going on for a lot of people anyway. I think people are maybe a bit more aware these days. But I think I'm a really classic depressive.
Okay.
If you feel sad all the time, every day for 2 weeks,
that's it.
You know that you're falling into a depressive episode. Right. So it's pretty clear for me.
Yeah. What are the main causes of depression? Is it psychological or something caused by external factors?
Psychological depressions are the ones really we've been talking about as being normal, but you can have people who have an abnormal depression in response to psychological sort of things that impinge on your life. And I think personality is an important influence on whether you get depressed and whether you stay depressed. And personality obviously gets mixed up with psychology. For retirees, I think a lot of people become happier when they retire. So that's the good news.
That's good news, yeah.
There are others of us who we spend our life getting self-esteem and good feelings and social contacts through work. And for them, of course, it is sad to have given it up. It's a loss. And for retirees in particular, it's important to think, well, what am I going to do with my life? What are the interests I've always wanted to follow? What are new interests I could take up? What do my family want to do? Am I a loner who needs to search out things that are useful to me? Am I a social person? Well, in that case, for goodness sake, let's make use of the fact I'm retired and I can get on with a whole lot of social things. Right. And my golf if I like it or whatever else. But most people who get depressed, probably medication is not the prime treatment. The prime treatment is something psychological, talking, mixing with others, or finding a new role or interest, etc.
David, what have you found are the signs or markers of a depressive episode?
Depression is always usually accompanied by anxiety, and anxiety has its own set of symptoms. Depressed appetite. You really don't enjoy anything. There's that absolutely no pleasure, and it becomes a physical feeling, like a brick or some heavy weight in you. You become isolated.
Yeah,
It's
that's right,
the
good.
feeling is if you can sum it up, it's an isolating feeling.
Okay.
It's a feeling like you're in a fog or a
Right,
world
right,
that just
yeah.
it's been leached of any meaning.
Is medication the best way to treat depression?
I think we've been sold on this medicalised
Yeah.
idea of mental health.
That's right. Yeah.
But
By the same
I
token.
just, by the same token, I don't trust myself to go off them because
Yeah, okay.
I feel if they're
Yeah.
making any kind of difference,
yeah.
even if it's a small,
Right.
and it usually is a fairly small difference in a
It-
minority of people,
yeah.
then it's probably worth taking.
Yeah.
You know?
And for you, it's enough of a difference.
It's enough to make me function.
So I was going to ask, does it always need medical intervention?
No,
No. Good.
but that's not dismissing medical intervention. Medical intervention can be very useful, especially in those depressions we talked about as how, they can be bipolar, or you can have the unipolar sort of the same depression with loss of appetite, loss of interests, slowed up, all that sort of complex syndrome that we call unipolar depression or depressive illness. They can do well with medication or physical methods of treatment, which we ought to mention. But most people who get depressed, probably medication is not the prime treatment. Exercise is something we've really got into recently, isn't it? There's a lot in the exercise is good for your heart, good for your spirits, and it may be that there are things you can do to prevent yourself ever getting depressed. And one is ensure you have lots of good exercise, sensible exercise. Hopefully you have interests, people you care about, and social contacts. And of course we're all different. There are some people who are loners. They don't have much in the way of social contact. They're too shy.
They're okay.
They're okay and they're happy with themselves. But even for them, some sort of social contact or stimulus is a good idea. And I think the stimulus and the things that give you a sense of self-esteem. For example, if you're able to do good for somebody, that can be a source of self-esteem and a source of happiness for the person you're doing it for.
That's right.
Not so much doing for, but doing with in many cases. Good. So that that sort of social contact, the exercise, going for walks, sport, whatever turns you on.
Are all episodes of depression the same, or do older people suffer differently, perhaps more often?
It's a different sort of depression sometimes in old age. Those of us who are elderly, of course we're more likely to get certain illnesses. Dementia or cognitive impairment can come on in old age, and people of my age, maybe 5% of us do have some sort of cognitive impairment which can lead to depression. Now the relevance of that is that that's something to do with the brain. The brain has got some pathology, and that in itself can lead to depression. But of course, as well as that, you know that your memory is not so good, and that can make you depressed, but not necessarily. So, I mean, in answer to your previous question, does depression occur more in old age? The statistics suggest otherwise, but I think there is a certain kind of depression, and maybe it doesn't get called depressive illness because it's depression in association with dementia or a heart problem or other things that make you feel unwell. And if you feel physically unwell, maybe you lose your energy because of your physical condition, but also loss of energy, loss of a feeling you want to get out and do things. That can be part of depression. So the two things get mixed up.
So David, you mentioned you were 62, so in a few years' time you'll be wanting to retire. I wonder, how will that affect your condition?
I worry a little bit about it because, your natural impulse is to, so many people want to physically move out of the city at that point. But I know that a lot of my support
Is in the city.
Is in the city. Like most people, their friends are in the city. They go out and then they become more isolated, and that's that's what you don't want to do if you suffer from these things.
Yeah.
I don't want to join the men's shed or whatever. But I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that. I might actually end up doing that.
Yeah, you might. Yeah.
But I don't. Yeah, I don't want to do something vague like I don't know. But I just want to use the time well.
Good. All right.
So it is a worry, but
But there's a tinge of optimism as well.
Yeah. I've come through a pretty excoriating kind of experience, and I've managed to hang in there. Right. Hang in there, hang in there, kids. That's the message here.
Good. All right, excellent. Finally, John, what mindset should a person have to avoid depression in retirement?
We should learn early in life, I think, to adapt. How can I adapt to the things that will happen in old age? The losses, the loss of job, loss of your role in life, all those losses that might make you unhappy. How do I adapt? And the way to adapt probably is to get onto something else.
John's thoughtful and considered approach to the causes and remedies for depression was surprisingly inclusive of non-medical interventions. Also, I was pleasantly surprised by a total absence of talk about chemical imbalances in the brain and in any notion of a malfunctioning hippocampus. He gave us a good overview of what depression really is and practical ways to deal with it. David painted a very vivid picture of what a depressive episode felt like and was. Like John, he was aware of a multifaceted perspective as a good way to alleviate the symptoms. David's core message to hang in there sounds like pretty good advice to me.